Hey crafters! I admit that recently I have been in a bit of a sewing rut. Or a lack of sewing rut, more realistically. I have projects I want to do and things I'm envisioning, but sometimes you just kind of poop out, and you just don't want to deal with frustration or fitting a pattern to your body or fiddly techniques. You just don't have the patience, don't have the energy for it. And I have recently been seeking out some straightforward projects that can be done in a relatively short period of time. And if you follow the steps and do things in the correct order and do it well, it should turn out nicely. We want a satisfying, fun, straightforward, effective project. Another thing I've been working on are aprons. I love vintage, especially vintage style aprons for myself, but I also love giving them as gifts because they're super cute and you can pick fabric for the person, and who doesn't need a cute apron for the kitchen? I mean, who doesn't? I recently pulled out one of my favorite vintage patterns. The only problem is the pattern I wanted to make, it was more complicated than I wanted to deal with. I was also working initially with some vintage fabric that I only had a set amount of, and so I actually had to simplify the pattern in order to get it to work for the fabric that I had. In the process of that project, I did find a way to simplify the vintage pattern and still create a cute vintage inspired apron that was less time consuming and less frustrating. Maybe not quite as cute as the original, but close. In today's project, I'm going to be using some very cute fabric, and we're going to be making this modified pattern again, and I'm going to take you along and show you what I'm doing. I'll show you the modifications I've made and the pattern I'm using, and of course, see if you guys get inspired to try something like this of your own. I definitely plan to use this apron as a gift for spring. I think it could be so cute for spring, summer birthdays. Mother's Day is coming up. Come along with me. I'll show you the fabric I'm working with. I'll show you the pattern, and we'll get started on this simple, straightforward, and hopefully very satisfying sewing project. Let's get started. Well, some of you guys may recognize this pattern. I have used it a couple times, and I was really glad to find it. I think the first time I tackled this pattern, I was looking for a pinafore pattern, and I ended up using this apron pattern and extending it a little longer. I did just a straight yoke instead of the pointed yoke, and then I wore it as part of kind of a cottagecore outfit, and that was really fun. This one takes a little while. There are a lot of pieces, and it's very nice. All the edges are hidden, and everything comes out looking really finished, but it definitely takes some time. And then, during the holidays, I made this apron, which is very fun. It's very few pieces sewn together. The tricky thing with this one is it is edged almost entirely in double fold bias tape. So that definitely was a bit of a learning curve for me. Learning curve, literally. Sorry. That one definitely took some time, but it's so cute, and everyone who I've given one to just loves this apron. So it's a great gift. But I think today what I'm going for is I want to remake this apron, but I'm going to do it a little bit simpler. I recently got some vintage fabric remnants, and some of them are just like screaming to be made into aprons. The only problem was the fabric had been cut into smaller pieces for somebody else's project. So instead of having enough fabric to do this apron as written, I had enough to change it up a little bit. Let's see here. There's our pattern. Hang on. I ended up, and sorry, this is very scribbly, as we do when we're doing things quickly, we scribble.
Instead of making this, I'm going to call it the bib, a bib quite like this on this apron, and instead of having straps that cross in the back, I ended up super simplifying. And if you can see with my scribbles here, I'll see if I can focus in a little bit. There we go. I ended up just doing a square bib. Two sides basically looked like a little pillowcase. Front and back squares sewn together, and then fabric straps inserted into that. And those straps could be then tied in the back. So that saved me a little bit of yardage because I didn't need quite as much to make these tie straps. It also took out some of the trickiness of making this cool yoke here with all of its assorted pieces and such, which took some time. So, you know, the simplification saved some fabric and saved some time. So then here's kind of my very sketchy sketch on the dimensions here. For my square bib, I used squares that were 11.5 by 13.5. So about 11.5 high and about 13.5 wide. That includes about 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then for those tie straps, which would then be tied, you know, around the back of the neck, I cut 4 pieces, and those ended up being about 30 inches by about 2.5 inches. I wanted to sew those with 2 seams so that they would lay a little flatter. So 4 pieces getting stitched together to make 2 tie straps for our lovely little bib. And then again, I didn't have enough fabric to make this beautiful full skirt. This full skirt has a front panel and 2 back panels. But I didn't have that. All I had was a piece that was about 42 inches long and about 22 inches, 42 length and 22 inches deep. Okay, that does, yeah. Blah, 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 blah. It's a rectangle. You're gonna have to figure it out, sorry. I just ended up using what I had and gathered it, and it ended up being plentiful. I would say you could make it a little bit longer, but it ended up being very cute. And then I used most of the other pattern pieces as reference. I used their yoke piece. I didn't make it a V, I just made it straight across. I used the pocket, and trying to think what else. I used the sewing directions, which really helped, but it turned out very cute, and I think I want to do that simplified design again because it does take time, but it's not quite as time consuming as the original, which was definitely a bit of an investment. Once I get my pieces cut out, by the way, here's my fabric. So cute, right? Not quite vintage, but still very cute. Well, once I get that fabric all ironed, let's see, what are we going to be doing first? I'm going to try to follow the pattern directions as much as I can, even though I'm changing things. Their order of operation is really helpful, and if you do things out of order, it's harder to sew things together and all those good things. So I'm going to try to actually follow the directions at this part as much as I can. I think our first job will be to make the bib. Of course, it's going to look different than this, so it'll be a square. And before I sew those 2 squares together, I'm going to need to make my straps, which are also going to look different, so that I can insert them into the bib. And then, okay, looks like we're attaching the bib to the front piece of the yoke. I'm going to call this a waistband, because let's just call it that. Bib of the apron, stitched to the front of the waistband. Cool. Then I gotta sew the little pocket and sew it onto the skirt. That's cute. Okay, I'm gonna get the skirt ready to gather. Okay, we're hemming everything. Cool. And then they talk us through how we would then be sewing basically the lining of the yoke waistband over everything else so that it can then be folded over and tacked down in the back. Okay, it sounds like kind of like this is the magical step. We'll look at it more when we get there, but I think first up, ironing, and second up, let's work on the bib. Good morning, guys. It's a new day. Last night I did some extra work. I was working on hemming the skirt. You can tell I still got some pins along the sides there. I need to stitch that down, pin that, and ironed it. I have made the mistake of not hemming the skirt part first before attempting to attach it to other things. And yes, I actually did it in the correct order this time, which is exciting. Hey, we've got our cute little pocket. It's basically just going to be a little patch pocket. Of course, you saw me that I had to fold the big kind of rectangle in half and pin that, and I stitched it, turned it right side out, and ironed it. So it is ready to go. Very cute. And then, of course, we've got our straps for the bib. Let's take a look at these guys. Of course, these are 2 pieces. Oops, sorry, gotta focus. There we go. And of course, I've ironed them so they look all nice. Next step, need to insert those straps into the bib and sew up the bib. And then, of course, once I have the skirt ready to go, I can position the pocket on the skirt, of course, on the outside, and stitch that down. Yay! Okay, well, we're working on the bib and the straps. Okay, so you can tell I've got the 2 pieces of the bib. We're pinning those together like a little bag. But while we're pinning those, we're also pinning these straps in there. Let's see. Okay, so there's one. See that thicker bit in there? That's one strap. I measured in, about 3/4 of an inch. I'm kind of playing around with where I like straps on this. You could put them right closer to the edge or move them in a little bit. There's the other guy. He's just sandwiched in there. Okay, and when we stitch around the bib, of course, we're going to be stitching in those ties. And when we flip everything right sides out, we'll have tie straps. I think once I've stitched that, turned everything right side out, of course, clipping the corners and all those good things, I think I'll then press the bib and probably top stitch that a little bit to hopefully make it lay flat a little bit. And then we can move on to attaching the pocket and then, yeah, move on from there. Okay, guys, we got some really awesome progress going on here. You might have noticed that we sewed the bib to the front part of the waistband. There are two parts to that. There will be a back part that we'll have to sew on as well, but we got those together. We also, you can't really tell, but we do have the pocket on the skirt. It's over there somewhere. Got this guy hemmed, and it's very tricky to see, but we also have some rows of very large gathering stitches across the top of the skirt because it is, yes, time to gather the skirt to the waistband. Huzzah! Okay, so since I have changed the pattern quite a bit and my skirt piece is different from the 3 skirt pieces that they were going to use in the pattern, I was sure to mark the middle and then the quarter marks on my skirts. Let's see, where's the middle? Middle's right about there, and then there's a quarter mark and a quarter mark over here. And I'm trying to line those up with the middle mark of the waistband, and then also they gave me some little triangles that kind of basically mark the edge of where the skirt should stop gathering ish on the pattern. So I'm going to use this as kind of the outer edge, and then here is the center right about here, and then I've also marked kind of the quarter point there. So now I got to gather this skirt, line up all the little markings, and get all my gathering in between those nice and neat, and pin everything together. And it's going to take a little while, so let's go to time lapse. I'm going to turn on a YouTube video and just kind of get zen, make a cup of coffee here, and get to gathering. Here we go. Well, you guys, we basically have an apron. Okay, got the skirt all hemmed. That's cool. Got the bib on there. Of course, with ties, we've got the skirt attached to the bib with that waistband. Now, our last job is to sew on basically the back of the waistband, and that's going to create the other side of these tie straps, and then it's going to cover up all these raw edges here in the middle. And like at first when I was looking at the directions on how to do this, it looked a little tricky, but then once I did it, it kind of made sense. So let's look at the directions and then I'll show you what I'm doing. Okay, here's the picture we're trying to recreate. Of course, our yoke / waistband doesn't have that pointy V part there, so ours is just straight across. But other than that, we're basically doing the same thing. So I flipped the apron over so we can line up our right sides together, and then we're going to be pinning the lining of that waistband over all the raw edges. And we've tucked, you can tell we've tucked the bib of the apron, which would go up here. It's been tucked down so that we can actually pin right over it. Let's take a peek. Okay. Whoa. It's a lot of apron. Okay. So you can tell we got our extra waistband lining piece up there. We got the rest of our apron down here. And yeah, it's really hard to see with this pattern, but here's the bib we got this folded down. Next, we want to be pinning our right sides together. So I'm going to have to line this up and pin all along here. We're going to have to go all along the tie strap, you know, actually line it up. Sorry, it's the wrong way. Use your imagination. So then I'm going to pin all the way along here and across the top and all the way down the other strap. But then when I get to the actual body of the apron, I'm not going to stitch. I'm going to need to do some little slip stitches on that by hand on the inside of the apron. No problem. Okay, so I got a bunch of pinning to do. I'm going to do that. I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll sew it and do a little hand sewing. And we should have a pretty cute, very strawberry-ish apron. Guys, while I'm doing this, if you think it's a great idea to make vintagey, cute aprons and have fun sewing projects in your life, give this video a little thumbs up and consider subscribing for more fun and fruity projects coming your way from Partners in Craft. As always, thanks you guys for sharing the love. Okay, I'm going to get to pinning and sewing, and I'll show you how it goes.